You find yourself restless, seeking peace amid the ceaseless noise and distraction that define the modern world. You ask, where does true calm reside? Is it in the absence of conflict, in the perfect alignment of circumstances, or in the fleeting moments when everything seems to pause? The answer is not where you expect. Peace doesn't dwell in the external world, nor does it abide in the shifting sands of fortune or misfortune. You begin to understand that peace arises not from external circumstances, but from within. Consider the chaos that surrounds you, the endless barrage of stimuli, the noise of conflicting demands, the relentless pull of obligations both trivial and profound. You stop and realize how often you have mistaken stillness for passivity, calm for resignation. But inner calm is not passivity, but the foundation of true strength. It is the silent fortress that shelters you when storms rage without. It is not a reward for the absence of trouble. It is the mastery of the mind in the presence of trouble. You've heard it said that peace is elusive, that it slips through your fingers like water because the world itself is turbulent. But what if the turbulence is not the enemy, but the teacher? What if the restless waves of life, rather than dragging you under, can lift you higher if only you hold your course with steady hands? The kind of peace you seek is not the absence of disruption, but the presence of unshakable resolve. You stop and ask yourself, why do I chase peace outside when the true sanctuary lies within? Why do I expect the world to quieten when the world is not designed for my comfort? The shift begins when you turn your gaze inward, when you recognize that your reactions shape your experience far more than external events ever could. You begin to understand that the power to cultivate tranquility rests not in altering the world, but in mastering your own mind. The mind is a theater where countless dramas unfold. Distractions pull your attention like 1,000 strings, and emotions surge like tides: fear, anger, desire, envy. You stop to observe these stirrings without judgment, without attachment. This is the first step toward peace, awareness. You begin to understand that to be disturbed is a choice, not a necessity. The kind of freedom you seek is the freedom from being tossed about by every impulse and reaction. Peace doesn't come from avoiding hardship. It comes from transforming hardship into a crucible of growth. You stop resisting the inevitable and start meeting life on its own terms. The world remains indifferent to your wishes, and therein lies a paradox. Your serenity does not depend on the world's kindness, but on your own reasoned response. This is the essence of resilience, that inner bulwark forged by understanding what lies within your power and what does not. You stop to separate the controllable from the uncontrollable. The kind of discipline required here is not rigid or cold, but flexible and wise. You accept that while you cannot command the winds, you can adjust your sails. You begin to understand that the mind's true strength emerges when it ceases to waste energy on what it cannot change, and instead channels its force where it matters most, on its own thoughts, judgments, and actions. You stop blaming circumstances, others, or fate for your unrest. You stop expecting external validation to soothe your spirit. The kind of peace you cultivate is self-sufficient, like a flame protected from the wind by the glass of your reasoned mind. You begin to understand that this flame, once kindled, illuminates even the darkest moments with clarity and calm. You stop confusing comfort for peace. Peace is not a state of ease alone, but a state of equilibrium amid disturbance. It is not the absence of challenge, but the presence of mastery over how you inhabit those challenges. You begin to understand that the world presents trials not to break you, but to reveal the strength you have yet to claim. You stop searching for peace in fleeting pleasures or distractions that only mask the underlying unrest. The kind of peace you seek is not a passing feeling but a settled condition, a quietude that endures beyond momentary relief. You begin to understand that true tranquility is a garden tended within, where the seeds of wisdom, patience, and fortitude grow resilient and strong. You stop fearing solitude, for it is in solitude that the mind finds the space to breathe and reflect. The kind of silence you embrace is not loneliness, but the presence of your own reasoned self. You begin to understand that in the stillness, you hear the voice of your own nature more clearly, free from the cacophony of external demands. You stop resisting the present moment, the only reality that truly exists. The kind of acceptance you practice is an act of courage, not surrender. You begin to understand that to accept is not to approve, but to acknowledge what is, and from that acknowledgement, to act with wisdom and clarity. You stop being a victim of circumstance and start being the master of your response. The kind of power you wield is quiet and steady, not loud or forceful. You begin to understand that the strength to remain unshaken in the face of turmoil is the greatest victory of all. You stop seeking validation outside yourself because you know that the only true judge is your own reasoned conscience. The kind of freedom you attain is the freedom from dependency on approval, from the chains of expectation. You begin to understand that when you stand firm within, external storms lose their power to unsettle. You stop chasing an impossible ideal of perfection in life's unfolding. The kind of acceptance you cultivate is a recognition of impermanence and imperfection as natural facets of existence. You begin to understand that peace is not the perfection of circumstances, but the perfection of your own equanimity amid imperfection. You stop fearing the unknown future because your peace is anchored in the present moment's reality. The kind of courage you foster is rooted in the here and now, in the clear-eyed recognition that worry about what may or may not come is a distraction from what is. You begin to understand that peace is the calm harbor where the restless mind can anchor. You stop clinging to the past's regrets or the future's anxieties. The kind of mindfulness you develop is a continuous return to presence, a gentle but firm redirection of attention away from fruitless rumination toward engaged awareness. You begin to understand that peace lives in the present, always accessible when you choose to meet it there. You stop confusing activity with progress. The kind of wisdom you nurture discerns between frantic busyness and purposeful action aligned with virtue. You begin to understand that peace flourishes not in the noise of endless doing, but in the quiet of intentional being. You stop seeking to control what lies beyond your reach, and instead focus on the cultivation of your own character. The kind of empowerment you claim arises from self-mastery, from the disciplined shaping of your thoughts and desires in accordance with reason. You begin to understand that peace is the companion of virtue, the natural outcome of a mind governed by wisdom. You stop allowing external chaos to dictate your inner state. The kind of resilience you develop is a steadfast refusal to be swept away by the tides of fortune. You begin to understand that the strongest minds are those that remain unshaken not by the absence of trouble, but by the presence of unyielding reason. You stop expecting peace to be handed to you as a gift from the world. The kind of peace you cultivate is earned through effort, through the quiet labor of self-reflection and discipline. You begin to understand that true tranquility is not a prize to be won, but a state to be achieved through mastery of oneself. You stop longing for an easier path and instead embrace the journey as it unfolds. The kind of courage you foster is a steadfast commitment to walk the path of wisdom, no matter how rugged or steep. You begin to understand that every obstacle is an opportunity to deepen your strength and resolve. You stop blaming the world for your unrest and start taking responsibility for your own peace. The kind of freedom you attain is the freedom to choose your attitude in any circumstance. You begin to understand that peace is not a passive state, but an active conquest of the mind. You stop confusing noise with meaning and instead listen for the quiet truths beneath the surface clamor. The kind of insight you gain opens the door to a profound stillness, a place where clarity emerges from the depths of contemplation. You begin to understand that peace is the natural condition of a mind undisturbed by unnecessary agitation. You stop seeking external approval and start honoring your own reasoned judgment. The kind of integrity you develop anchors your peace in authenticity and purpose. You begin to understand that when you live in accordance with your own principles, tranquility follows naturally. You stop fearing discomfort because you recognize it as a transient visitor, not a permanent state. The kind of endurance you practice strengthens your spirit, allowing you to remain firm in the face of difficulty. You begin to understand that peace is not the avoidance of hardship, but the courage to face it without losing yourself. You stop chasing after illusions of control and instead embrace the reality of uncertainty. The kind of wisdom you embody is the acceptance of life's unpredictability without surrendering your inner calm. You begin to understand that peace is the balance struck between engagement and detachment. You stop resisting change and start flowing with the rhythms of life. The kind of flexibility you cultivate allows you to adapt without losing your center. You begin to understand that peace is the harmony of a mind aligned with the ever-shifting currents of existence. You stop confusing silence with emptiness and start recognizing it as fullness. The kind of presence you develop fills the spaces between thoughts with awareness and peace. You begin to understand that in silence lies the source of all clarity and strength. You stop seeking peace as a distant goal and start living it moment by moment. The kind of practice you adopt is a continuous return to reason, a steady commitment to align your mind with what is true and good. You begin to understand that peace is not something to be found, but something to be made, cultivated, and cherished within. You stop waiting for the world to grant you stillness and start creating it within yourself. The kind of mastery you achieve is the art of standing unmoved amid the storm, the quiet power of a soul at rest in its own reason. You begin to understand that this is the essence of freedom, the heart of true peace. You begin to understand that true resilience is not born from circumstance, but from the mastery of your own responses. The world will not yield to your desires. It is indifferent, often harsh, and frequently unjust. Yet within this unyielding reality lies the power you seek, the power over your own mind. You stop hoping for a gentler fate and start cultivating the strength to meet whatever comes with unwavering composure. You stop confusing external events with your inner state. The kind of discernment you cultivate is the cornerstone of Stoic wisdom, distinguishing what lies within your power from what does not. This is no mere intellectual exercise, but a transformative realization. You begin to understand that while you cannot command the world's whims, you can govern your judgments, your desires, and your aversions. This is the fulcrum upon which your peace balances. You stop being a slave to circumstance and start becoming the architect of your own emotional landscape. The kind of control you exercise is subtle yet profound. It is not about suppressing feelings or denying reality, but about choosing which impressions to accept and which to reject. You begin to understand that emotions are not commands but signals, and you are the one who decides whether to act upon them or let them pass like clouds across the sky. You stop reacting impulsively to external provocations. The kind of discipline you develop is the pause between stimulus and response, the space where reason can assert itself. You begin to understand that this interval, however brief, is the moment of liberation, the moment when you reclaim your sovereignty over your own mind. You stop seeking to eliminate all adversity, recognizing instead that hardship is an inevitable and necessary part of life. The kind of resilience you embody embraces difficulty as a forge for character. You begin to understand that strength is not the absence of pain, but the ability to endure and grow through it. You stop lamenting what you cannot change, and instead turn your attention inward. The kind of focus you nurture is the steady cultivation of virtue, wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, the true sources of lasting strength. You begin to understand that external circumstances are fleeting shadows, but virtue is the light that illuminates your path regardless of the terrain. You stop allowing your emotions to dictate your actions. The kind of mastery you seek is not the suppression of feeling, but the harmonious alignment of emotion with reason. You begin to understand that when your desires and aversions are guided by rational principles, they become allies rather than enemies in your quest for tranquility. You stop being overwhelmed by the unpredictability of life. The kind of acceptance you practice is the serene acknowledgement of fate's inscrutable design. You begin to understand that to resist what is beyond your control is to court suffering, but to embrace it with equanimity is to find freedom. You stop blaming others for your distress and start taking responsibility for your own peace. The kind of accountability you cultivate is a source of empowerment. You begin to understand that when you claim ownership of your reactions, you dismantle the power that external events hold over you. You stop confusing desires for necessities. The kind of clarity you gain reveals which wants are true needs and which are mere distractions from your inner calm. You begin to understand that freedom arises from reducing dependency on externals and focusing on what truly nourishes the soul. You stop fearing loss, knowing that attachment breeds suffering. The kind of detachment you develop is not cold indifference, but a joyful acceptance of impermanence. You begin to understand that when you cherish what you have without clinging, you savor life more deeply and suffer less profoundly. You stop seeking validation outside yourself and instead root your self-worth in your own reasoned judgment. The kind of confidence you build is unshakable because it rests on internal foundations. You begin to understand that true esteem flows not from applause, but from integrity and virtue. You stop resisting the natural course of events, recognizing that struggle against what is only intensifies suffering. The kind of harmony you strive for is the alignment of your will with nature's order. You begin to understand that peace arises when you flow with the currents of life rather than fighting the tide. You stop allowing anger and resentment to consume you. The kind of forgiveness you cultivate is a release of burdens, a freeing of your own spirit from chains forged by bitterness. You begin to understand that resentment harms you more than the object of your ire, and peace demands its relinquishment. You stop confusing happiness with pleasure, recognizing that transient pleasures often betray lasting contentment. The kind of joy you seek is rooted in virtue and the tranquility it brings. You begin to understand that a life lived according to reason is a life of enduring fulfillment. You stop fearing death and the unknown because you have come to see them as natural parts of existence. The kind of courage you embody faces mortality without despair. You begin to understand that by accepting the inevitability of death, you free yourself to live more fully in the present. You stop being swayed by praise or blame, understanding that the opinions of others are beyond your control. The kind of equanimity you develop is a shield against the fluctuations of reputation. You begin to understand that your inner worth is defined not by others, but by your own adherence to virtue. You stop allowing desire to dictate your peace, recognizing that unchecked craving leads to turmoil. The kind of temperance you cultivate is a moderation that preserves freedom. You begin to understand that self-control is the gateway to serenity. You stop viewing obstacles as misfortunes and start seeing them as opportunities for growth. The kind of perspective you adopt transforms adversity into a teacher. You begin to understand that every challenge is a chance to practice patience, courage, and wisdom. You stop seeking certainty in an uncertain world and instead cultivate an attitude of courageous acceptance. The kind of mindset you nurture embraces change and unpredictability without fear. You begin to understand that peace is not the absence of uncertainty, but the presence of resolve. You stop clinging to rigid expectations and open yourself to possibility. The kind of flexibility you acquire allows you to adapt gracefully to life's vicissitudes. You begin to understand that resilience is the dance between steadfastness and openness. You stop being controlled by fear, recognizing it as a false master. The kind of bravery you foster is the willingness to face discomfort and unknowns with steady heart. You begin to understand that courage is the foundation upon which tranquility rests. You stop confusing activity with progress, discerning that not all action leads to peace. The kind of wisdom you develop guides you to act with purpose and restraint. You begin to understand that sometimes the greatest strength lies in restraint. You stop resisting solitude, finding in it the space to cultivate inner strength. The kind of solitude you embrace is not loneliness, but a sanctuary for reflection and renewal. You begin to understand that in solitude, your true self emerges undisturbed. You stop being a passive observer of your own life and start an active participant, shaping your character through deliberate choices. The kind of agency you claim is the power to direct your inner world regardless of external chaos. You begin to understand that mastery of self is the highest form of freedom. You stop fearing emotional pain and start embracing it as a signal and a teacher. The kind of awareness you develop transforms suffering into insight. You begin to understand that through understanding your pain, you gain wisdom and resilience. You stop seeking to control outcomes and focus instead on your own intentions and efforts. The kind of detachment you practice liberates you from anxiety over results. You begin to understand that peace comes from commitment to virtue rather than attachment to success. You stop allowing your mind to be a battleground of conflicting impulses. The kind of harmony you cultivate is the integration of reason and emotion. You begin to understand that true strength is the unity of mind and heart. You stop pursuing fleeting pleasures that erode your tranquility and instead seek enduring goods aligned with your principles. The kind of discernment you apply protects your peace. You begin to understand that the highest joys are those that nourish the soul. You stop being a slave to passion and start mastering your desires through reason. The kind of sovereignty you achieve over yourself is the essence of Stoic empowerment. You begin to understand that freedom is found not in satisfying every impulse, but in choosing which impulses to heed. You stop being overwhelmed by the external world and turn inward to the citadel of your mind. The kind of refuge you build is unassailable by circumstance. You begin to understand that resilience is the mind's steadfastness amidst change. You stop expecting peace to be a gift and accept it as a discipline. The kind of effort you invest is the daily practice of aligning your thoughts and actions with reason. You begin to understand that resilience is earned through consistent, mindful effort. You stop seeking to escape problems and instead face them with calm resolve. The kind of courage you embody meets adversity head-on with confidence. You begin to understand that true power lies in the ability to endure without losing oneself. You stop being tossed by the waves of emotion and anchor yourself in reason. The kind of stability you achieve is the hallmark of a resilient spirit. You begin to understand that peace is the quiet dominion of a mind ruled by wisdom. You stop relying on fortune to grant you happiness and instead cultivate an inner fortress. The kind of security you build is impervious to external fluctuations. You begin to understand that the truest strength is self-reliance. You stop fearing failure because you see it as a stepping stone rather than a defeat. The kind of perspective you adopt transforms setbacks into growth. You begin to understand that resilience is the capacity to rise after every fall. You stop chasing illusions of control and embrace the serenity that comes with acceptance. The kind of freedom you find is the freedom from futile struggle. You begin to understand that peace is the calm in the eye of life's storm. You begin to understand that the cultivation of inner peace is not a passive state, but an active practice rooted in mindfulness and reflection. The world clamors incessantly, urging you to react, to engage, to be swept away by its tides. Yet you stop and realize that within you lies a sanctuary, accessible through deliberate attention and the disciplined habit of turning inward. You stop allowing the relentless noise of life to dictate the tempo of your mind. The kind of mindfulness you develop is a vigilant presence, a watchful awareness that observes thoughts and feelings without immediate judgment or reaction. You begin to understand that through this awareness, you create a space between stimulus and response, a space where reason can assert its rightful place. You stop identifying with every passing thought and emotion. The kind of reflection you cultivate is a gentle detachment, a recognition that your mind is not the sum total of its content, but the observer of it. You begin to understand that by stepping back, you gain clarity, and with clarity comes the freedom to choose your path rather than be led astray by impulse. You stop fearing the silence within, recognizing it instead as a fertile ground for self-knowledge. The kind of solitude you embrace is not isolation, but communion with your own reasoned self. You begin to understand that in silence, the distractions fall away, and the true nature of your thoughts and desires comes into focus. You stop chasing distractions that offer only the illusion of relief. The kind of clarity you seek emerges when you resist the temptation to escape into trivialities or busyness. You begin to understand that distraction is often a costly evasion, a flight from the discomfort of facing oneself honestly. You stop allowing your attention to be hijacked by every urgent demand. The kind of discipline you nurture is the ability to set mindful boundaries, to say no to that which fragments your focus, and yes to that which deepens your understanding. You begin to understand that peace flourishes where attention is cultivated deliberately and protected fiercely. You stop mistaking constant activity for meaningful engagement. The kind of reflection you practice distinguishes between mere motion and purposeful action aligned with your highest values. You begin to understand that stillness is not emptiness, but a profound presence, a readiness to act wisely rather than react impulsively. You stop drowning in the flood of reactive thoughts and instead learn to observe them as passing phenomena. The kind of mindfulness you embody is akin to watching clouds drift across a vast, clear sky. You begin to understand that your thoughts do not define you. They are transient visitors, not permanent fixtures. You stop resisting uncomfortable emotions and allow them to surface with curiosity rather than fear. The kind of reflective awareness you develop transforms feelings from tyrants into messengers. You begin to understand that by acknowledging emotions without being ruled by them, you gain insight into your inner workings. You stop seeking instant solutions and instead cultivate patience with the slow work of self-examination. The kind of discipline you adopt values the process over the outcome, knowing that lasting peace is the fruit of sustained effort. You begin to understand that true clarity unfolds gradually, nurtured by daily practice. You stop avoiding solitude for fear of confronting your own mind. The kind of courage you muster embraces solitude as a necessary condition for growth. You begin to understand that only in moments of quiet reflection can you discern the patterns that govern your thoughts and behaviors. You stop allowing external distractions to fragment your sense of self. The kind of mindfulness you develop is a tether to your own reason, pulling you back from the chaos of external demands. You begin to understand that presence is the foundation upon which all other virtues rest. You stop confusing busyness with productivity. The kind of reflection you foster discerns between superficial engagement and deep contemplation. You begin to understand that meaningful progress requires both thoughtful pause and deliberate action. You stop ignoring the subtle signals your mind sends when overwhelmed. The kind of awareness you cultivate listens attentively to signs of fatigue, stress, or confusion. You begin to understand that honoring these signals is an act of wisdom, preserving your capacity for calm and clarity. You stop resisting the ebb and flow of your inner life. The kind of mindfulness you embrace acknowledges the natural rhythms of thought and feeling. You begin to understand that peace is not the suppression of inner movement, but the acceptance of its patterns with equanimity. You stop allowing past regrets or future anxieties to dominate your attention. The kind of presence you develop anchors you firmly in the now. You begin to understand that the present moment is the only domain where peace can be found and exercised. You stop neglecting the practice of journaling or reflection as mere indulgences. The kind of discipline you cultivate values these practices as essential tools for self-mastery. You begin to understand that writing down your thoughts and examining them leads to greater self-awareness and control. You stop fearing the confrontation with uncomfortable truths about yourself. The kind of courage you develop faces these truths with honesty and compassion. You begin to understand that acknowledging your flaws is not defeat, but the first step toward transformation. You stop allowing habitual patterns to govern your life unconsciously. The kind of mindfulness you foster brings these patterns into the light of awareness. You begin to understand that only when illuminated can they be changed or accepted with wisdom. You stop confusing distraction for rest. The kind of clarity you seek distinguishes between true rejuvenation and mere escape. You begin to understand that genuine rest restores the mind's capacity for presence and reason. You stop surrendering your attention to the endless pull of digital noise and superficial stimuli. The kind of discipline you develop sets boundaries around the consumption of information. You begin to understand that protecting your mental space is a form of self-respect and a prerequisite for peace. You stop judging yourself harshly for lapses in concentration or moments of distraction. The kind of compassion you extend to yourself fosters resilience rather than guilt. You begin to understand that mindfulness is a practice, not a perfection, and each moment offers a new opportunity to return. You stop allowing the fear of emptiness to drive you toward constant stimulation. The kind of presence you cultivate embraces emptiness as a canvas for creativity and insight. You begin to understand that in stillness, the mind can renew itself and discover deeper truths. You stop confusing silence with loneliness and instead recognize it as the language of the soul. The kind of solitude you embrace nourishes your connection to your own reasoned self. You begin to understand that silence is the wellspring from which clarity and peace flow. You stop resisting the discipline required to maintain mindfulness, seeing it as a burden. The kind of commitment you foster understands discipline as the pathway to freedom. You begin to understand that through consistent practice, the mind becomes a sanctuary rather than a battlefield. You stop allowing fleeting thoughts to derail your focus. The kind of awareness you develop gently redirects attention back to the present task. You begin to understand that peace is found in the sustained engagement of the mind with what truly matters. You stop confusing the absence of thought with emptiness, recognizing instead the presence of profound awareness. The kind of mindfulness you cultivate reveals the vast space within where peace resides. You begin to understand that this space is always accessible, a refuge untouched by external turmoil. You stop allowing the mind's chatter to obscure your perception of reality. The kind of reflection you practice clears away illusions and misconceptions. You begin to understand that clarity is not the absence of complexity, but the ability to see through it with discernment. You stop fearing the vulnerability that comes with honest self-reflection. The kind of courage you embody embraces vulnerability as a strength. You begin to understand that only by facing yourself fully can you transcend limitations and cultivate true peace. You stop seeking quick fixes and instead commit to the slow, steady work of self-awareness. The kind of discipline you maintain values process over instant gratification. You begin to understand that peace is a journey, not a destination, cultivated moment by moment. You stop allowing distraction to fragment your sense of purpose. The kind of mindfulness you nurture aligns your attention with your deepest values. You begin to understand that when your mind is settled and focused, your actions flow with greater clarity and effectiveness. You stop confusing the noise of the world with the voice of wisdom. The kind of discernment you develop filters out distractions to hear the quiet truths within. You begin to understand that wisdom speaks softly and requires a mind prepared to listen. You stop resisting the stillness that invites self-examination. The kind of presence you embrace welcomes silence as a path to insight. You begin to understand that from stillness arises the power to act with clarity and compassion. You stop confusing being busy with being fulfilled and instead seek a life aligned with reason and virtue. The kind of reflection you cultivate guides you toward meaningful engagement rather than superficial motion. You begin to understand that peace is the natural fruit of a mind dedicated to truth and purpose. You stop fearing the emptiness that comes with letting go of distraction. The kind of acceptance you develop sees emptiness as a space for renewal. You begin to understand that peace is not found in clutter, but in the clarity of a focused mind. You stop allowing the mind's restlessness to dictate your state of being. The kind of mindfulness you cultivate calms the turbulence within. You begin to understand that tranquility is the natural condition of a mind at peace with itself. You stop expecting peace to arrive without effort and instead embrace the discipline required to nurture it. The kind of commitment you foster is a daily practice of attention and reflection. You begin to understand that peace is made, not found, through the cultivation of mindful presence. You begin to understand that acceptance is not the passive resignation so often mistaken for surrender, but a dynamic engagement with reality as it is. The world will unfold in ways beyond your control, sometimes gentle, sometimes harsh, often indifferent. You stop fighting what cannot be changed and instead turn your strength inward, embracing the present with clear eyes and a steady heart. You stop resisting the inevitable trials that life presents. The kind of acceptance you cultivate is not a quiet giving in, but a courageous acknowledgement of reality. You begin to understand that by embracing what is, you free yourself from the corrosive grip of frustration and despair. This is not surrender. That's mastery. That's the essence of freedom. You stop wasting energy on futile complaints or bitter resistance. The kind of strength you embody is the calm power of a mind that meets adversity without rebellion. You begin to understand that opposition to the facts only deepens suffering, while acceptance opens the path to peace. You stop seeing obstacles as enemies and start viewing them as teachers. The kind of mindset you nurture sees every difficulty as an opportunity to practice patience, courage, and wisdom. You begin to understand that growth arises not from ease, but from the trials that test your resolve and character. You stop longing for a life free from hardship and instead commit to meeting hardship with equanimity. The kind of resilience you develop is forged in the fire of acceptance. You begin to understand that to endure with grace is to triumph over circumstance. You stop allowing external turmoil to dictate your inner state. The kind of freedom you claim is the freedom to choose your attitude regardless of what transpires around you. You begin to understand that your power lies not in shaping events, but in shaping your response to them. You stop fearing suffering as an unbearable burden and start seeing it as a natural part of existence. The kind of courage you embody embraces suffering as a passage to deeper understanding. You begin to understand that pain, when met with wisdom, becomes a catalyst for strength rather than a source of defeat. You stop clinging to expectations that reality will conform to your wishes. The kind of acceptance you practice is the relinquishing of control over outcomes. You begin to understand that peace arises when you let go of attachment to what should be and meet what is instead. You stop resisting change and start flowing with the currents of life. The kind of adaptability you cultivate allows you to navigate uncertainty without losing your center. You begin to understand that acceptance is not passive submission, but an active alignment with the ever-shifting nature of existence. You stop allowing frustration to consume you when plans falter or events disappoint. The kind of patience you develop is the steady calm that waits without agitation. You begin to understand that waiting with equanimity is a quiet strength that outlasts the storms of life. You stop viewing setbacks as failures and start seeing them as steps on the path. The kind of perspective you adopt transforms obstacles into milestones of growth. You begin to understand that resilience is the capacity to rise each time you fall, stronger and wiser. You stop being overwhelmed by the unpredictability of life and instead embrace its mystery. The kind of trust you foster is in your own capacity to endure, adapt, and thrive. You begin to understand that acceptance is the foundation upon which confidence is built. You stop reacting with anger or despair to misfortune and instead respond with calm reason. The kind of emotional regulation you cultivate is a shield against the turmoil that threatens peace. You begin to understand that mastery over your emotions is mastery over your life. You stop allowing disappointment to erode your spirit and instead renew your commitment to virtue. The kind of steadfastness you develop is the quiet resolve to live according to your principles regardless of circumstance. You begin to understand that character is the true measure of strength. You stop fearing the unknown because you have built a fortress within. The kind of security you cultivate is not an external certainty, but an inner stability. You begin to understand that true peace is the product of a mind anchored in wisdom, not in the shifting sands of fate. You stop seeing acceptance as defeat and start seeing it as empowerment. The kind of power you claim is the power to choose your own path amid chaos. You begin to understand that freedom is not the absence of constraint, but the mastery of choice. You stop resisting hardship by clinging to illusions of control. The kind of surrender you embrace is the surrender to reason, to nature, and to the flow of life. You begin to understand that through this surrender, you gain the strength to face whatever comes with grace. You stop allowing external events to rob you of your peace. The kind of resilience you cultivate is a fortress built on acceptance and reason. You begin to understand that no storm can reach the soul that has anchored itself in virtue. You stop battling reality and start cooperating with it. The kind of harmony you develop is a partnership between your will and the world's unfolding. You begin to understand that peace is found not in domination, but in alignment. You stop being reactive and start being responsive. The kind of mindfulness you practice enables you to choose your reactions wisely. You begin to understand that each moment offers a new chance to exercise freedom. You stop fearing pain and start welcoming it as a necessary passage. The kind of endurance you embody is the patience to endure suffering without losing your essence. You begin to understand that pain is temporary, but the strength gained through it endures. You stop resisting the flow of life and start moving with it. The kind of flexibility you gain allows you to remain centered amid change. You begin to understand that acceptance is the art of flowing without breaking. You stop letting frustration cloud your judgment. The kind of clarity you cultivate sees beyond immediate discomfort to the larger picture. You begin to understand that setbacks are transient and growth is permanent. You stop seeking to control what is uncontrollable and instead focus on your own actions. The kind of discipline you nurture is the steady application of reason to your choices. You begin to understand that your power lies in your own conduct, not in external events. You stop allowing anger to dictate your behavior and choose calm instead. The kind of temperance you practice tempers passion with reason. You begin to understand that mastery over emotion is mastery over life. You stop fearing hardship and start preparing for it. The kind of foresight you develop readies you to meet difficulties with composure. You begin to understand that anticipation without anxiety is a tool of resilience. You stop blaming others or fate for your troubles and take responsibility for your peace. The kind of ownership you claim empowers you to act rather than complain. You begin to understand that peace is a product of your own choices. You stop confusing acceptance with passivity and see it as active engagement. The kind of agency you cultivate is the ability to shape your inner world regardless of external chaos. You begin to understand that true freedom is found in the mastery of the mind. You stop being a prisoner of circumstance and start being a sovereign of your own will. The kind of sovereignty you nurture is a quiet, unshakable strength. You begin to understand that the greatest conquest is the conquest of self. You stop resisting what cannot be changed and start embracing it with reason. The kind of wisdom you embody is the recognition that peace arises from harmony with reality. You begin to understand that acceptance is the gateway to tranquility. You stop fearing uncertainty and instead cultivate trust in your own resilience. The kind of confidence you build is grounded in preparation and adaptability. You begin to understand that peace is the calm born of readiness. You stop letting disappointment erode your spirit and renew your commitment to virtue. The kind of steadfastness you develop is the quiet power to endure without losing hope. You begin to understand that character is the true source of strength. You stop resisting the present moment and meet it with open acceptance. The kind of presence you cultivate is the foundation of peace. You begin to understand that peace is the flowering of acceptance in the soil of awareness. You stop seeing hardship as a curse and start seeing it as a necessary path. The kind of perspective you adopt transforms suffering into growth. You begin to understand that resilience is the alchemy of turning trials into triumph. You stop reacting with despair to the world's indifference and respond with reason and courage. The kind of equanimity you embody is the mark of true freedom. You begin to understand that peace is the reward of a mind that chooses wisely amidst chaos. You stop fearing loss because you value what cannot be taken away, your reason and virtue. The kind of security you develop rests in the immovable foundation of inner strength. You begin to understand that peace is the inheritance of the wise. You stop resisting life's challenges and meet them as opportunities to practice virtue. The kind of mindset you nurture is a continual readiness to learn and grow. You begin to understand that acceptance is the path to lasting empowerment. You begin to understand that the journey toward lasting inner peace is not a destination to be reached, but a continual path to be walked. It is a discipline, a daily commitment to rise above the tumult of external events and anchor yourself in reason and virtue. You stop expecting peace to come as a gift and instead embrace it as a conquest, one that requires courage, persistence, and unyielding self-mastery. You stop being passive in the face of life's fluctuations and start actively shaping your inner world. The kind of empowerment you cultivate is born from consistent practice, the deliberate alignment of thought and action with wisdom. You begin to understand that true power is not wielded over others or circumstances, but over your own mind. You stop allowing the chaos outside to unsettle your core. The kind of stability you nurture is an inner citadel, built brick by brick through reflection, discipline, and the steady application of Stoic principles. You begin to understand that this fortress of reason is impervious to the shifting winds of fortune. You stop seeking comfort in fleeting pleasures or distractions that only mask unrest. The kind of fulfillment you embrace arises from living in accordance with your highest values, cultivating virtues that sustain you beyond momentary satisfaction. You begin to understand that lasting tranquility is the fruit of a virtuous life. You stop fearing the inevitable challenges and uncertainties of life. The kind of courage you embody is a steadfast resolve to meet whatever comes with equanimity and grace. You begin to understand that resilience is not the absence of difficulty, but the mastery of response. You stop allowing yourself to be shaped by external opinions or transient emotions. The kind of self-mastery you cultivate is a sovereign calm that remains undisturbed by praise or blame. You begin to understand that true freedom is the freedom to be anchored in your own reasoned judgment. You stop being distracted by the endless noise of the world and focus your attention inward, tending the garden of your mind with care and intention. The kind of mindfulness you practice is the foundation of self-mastery. You begin to understand that peace flourishes where attention is deliberate and presence unwavering. You stop confusing activity with progress and instead engage in purposeful action that reflects your deepest principles. The kind of discipline you foster guides you to act not out of impulse, but out of reasoned choice. You begin to understand that each moment offers an opportunity to practice virtue anew. You stop resisting solitude and find in it the space to cultivate wisdom and clarity. The kind of reflection you embrace deepens your understanding of self and world alike. You begin to understand that in solitude, the noise fades and the true voice of reason emerges. You stop fearing failure or setbacks, seeing them as integral to growth rather than signs of defeat. The kind of perspective you develop transforms obstacles into milestones of learning. You begin to understand that resilience is the capacity to rise stronger with each challenge faced. You stop allowing desires and aversions to rule your peace. The kind of temperance you embody tempers passion with reason, guiding your choices toward what is good and enduring. You begin to understand that mastery over desires is the path to true freedom. You stop clinging to the illusion of control and embrace the reality of uncertainty with calm acceptance. The kind of wisdom you cultivate allows you to navigate life's unpredictability without losing your center. You begin to understand that peace is the calm harbor in the storm of change. You stop being overwhelmed by the demands of life and instead cultivate a steady rhythm of discipline and rest. The kind of balance you seek harmonizes effort with renewal, action with reflection. You begin to understand that sustaining peace requires both strength and gentleness. You stop allowing fear and anxiety to dominate your mind and cultivate courage rooted in reason. The kind of bravery you develop faces the unknown with confidence and calm. You begin to understand that courage is the armor of the tranquil soul. You stop being swayed by the transient rewards of the world and root your happiness in virtue. The kind of joy you cultivate is not dependent on external circumstances, but arises from living in harmony with your principles. You begin to understand that true contentment is self-generated and self-sustaining. You stop being reactive and instead respond to life with thoughtful intention. The kind of presence you embody is a steady light illuminating your path. You begin to understand that each moment is an opportunity to exercise freedom and deepen peace. You stop seeking external validation and instead find approval within, grounded in your own reasoned standards. The kind of self-respect you nurture is unshakable because it is self-generated. You begin to understand that peace is the companion of integrity. You stop fearing solitude and instead find companionship in your own reason. The kind of inner dialogue you cultivate is a source of strength and clarity. You begin to understand that solitude is the school of self-mastery. You stop allowing distractions to fragment your focus and cultivate sustained attention on what matters most. The kind of concentration you develop is the soil from which wisdom and peace grow. You begin to understand that a settled mind is a powerful mind. You stop resisting the flow of life and instead move with its rhythms, adapting without losing your center. The kind of flexibility you embody is the dance of resilience. You begin to understand that peace is found not in rigidity, but in harmony with change. You stop confusing comfort with peace and recognize that true tranquility often requires discomfort and discipline. The kind of strength you develop embraces challenge as a path to growth. You begin to understand that peace is the reward of perseverance. You stop being a passive recipient of life circumstances and become an active participant in your own transformation. The kind of agency you claim is the power to choose your attitude and actions. You begin to understand that mastery over self is the highest form of freedom. You stop seeking immediate satisfaction and cultivate patience with the slow unfolding of wisdom. The kind of perseverance you nurture sustains you through trials and setbacks. You begin to understand that peace is a steady flame, not a fleeting spark. You stop allowing your mind to be cluttered with unnecessary worries and focus on what lies within your power. The kind of clarity you develop frees you from the tyranny of anxiety. You begin to understand that peace is the fruit of discerning attention. You stop fearing loss and impermanence and instead cherish the present moment fully. The kind of gratitude you cultivate anchors you in the now. You begin to understand that peace is born of appreciation, not possession. You stop resisting your own nature and start cultivating your character with intention and care. The kind of self-mastery you develop is the foundation of lasting tranquility. You begin to understand that peace is the natural state of a mind aligned with virtue. You stop allowing external turmoil to disturb your inner calm and instead cultivate an unshakable center. The kind of resilience you embody is a quiet strength that endures beyond circumstance. You begin to understand that true peace is invincible. You stop confusing activity with meaning and instead pursue a life of purpose and reasoned choice. The kind of fulfillment you seek is grounded in virtue and wisdom. You begin to understand that peace is the companion of a life well lived. You stop fearing the unknown future and cultivate trust in your own capacity to meet it. The kind of confidence you nurture is rooted in preparation and acceptance. You begin to understand that peace arises from readiness and resolve. You stop allowing fleeting emotions to dictate your state and instead cultivate steady equanimity. The kind of emotional balance you foster shields you from turmoil. You begin to understand that peace is the calm dominion of a reasoned mind. You stop seeking peace as a distant goal and instead live it moment by moment through practice and presence. The kind of commitment you make is to continuous growth and self-mastery. You begin to understand that peace is not found but made, nurtured, and cherished within. You stop waiting for external conditions to be perfect and instead create peace through your own choices and actions. The kind of freedom you claim is the freedom to be tranquil amid chaos. You begin to understand that this is the essence of wisdom and the heart of true empowerment. You stop looking outward for validation and find strength within your own reasoned self. The kind of integrity you embody is the foundation of lasting peace. You begin to understand that when you live in accordance with virtue, tranquility follows naturally. You stop fearing hardship and meet it with courage and acceptance, knowing it is part of the human condition. The kind of resilience you develop is the quiet power to endure and grow. You begin to understand that peace is the reward of a mind steadfast in reason. You stop being controlled by external circumstances and become the master of your own inner life. The kind of sovereignty you achieve is a sanctuary of calm in a turbulent world. You begin to understand that this mastery is the highest freedom and the truest peace.